All right, we're here with Ryan today for the Entre Podcast. Not sure which number this is for us.
Bonus something.
Yeah,
bonus 2.
Well, Ryan has the good hair. I don't have the good hair. But follow us at entre.realestate. You can find us there on Podbeam, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all that good stuff. So excited to be here with Ryan today. We're going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about the conference we went to just recently. We went to the Texas A&M Real Estate Center 34th Annual Real Estate Conference.
Yeah.
And lots of good intel.
Yeah.
Lots of good information.
No, I had a good time there. That's probably like one of the bigger conferences I've been to and the most speakers. So the wide range of topics that were covered.
Yeah.
Felt, some of them I had to take a break and walk around, but a lot of them had good information.
Yes.
I felt like.
There's a lot of data.
Yeah.
So this conference is not a lot of hoorah-rah. It's more data to help our clients, ourselves, make better business decisions in the Texas land market industry. Mm-hmm. So what I really like about this conference too, Ryan, is a lot of times when you go to a real estate conference, it's people that are just in real estate brokerage. What I like about this one is you have appraisers.
Yeah, I saw that.
You've got land buyers, you've got investors, you get people that are developing stuff that attend. And then you do have your brokers and realtors there too, but it's a wide variety of folks that do come to this conference. So you get to network with different types of people besides brokers, which I think is pretty neat. So when we got to the conference, I'm president of Realtor Land Institute this year, Texas chapter. And so we started off our deal hosting a farm and ranch contracts course. And so that was start off the afternoon with that and learned a lot of good things through that contracts course, Ryan. I'm just going to talk about one thing with it, but the importance of having a great legal description in your contract is very important. And I was thinking about when the instructor was talking about that, got to think about a transaction I did in my early career, and I was representing the seller. And many years ago, we didn't have as many roads, so it was a family that had, I think it was 110, and on the other side of the road, it was about 16 acres on the other side of the road. So it was, 130 acres thereabouts tract. Well, the county had come through and brought the road through, and it divided that parent tract up into 2 sections. And so we went to sell the smaller tract across the road from the main tract, which I call the bigger tract. The county had it at like 6.88 acres is what they had it listed for. Well, when it came time, buyer put it under contract, represented by a different broker. Buyer put it under contract, and it was like double the size. It was like 13 acres. And so, had a legal description in there of what it said, 6.88 acres, but when it surveyed out, it was 13 acres, like double the size. And my seller's like, listen, there's 13 acres. They can take what 6.8 acres they want out of this, but I'm not selling them 13 acres on a 6.8 acre deal.
Yeah.
And so this is what got me thinking about the importance of a great legal description in a listing. So yes, the county has, what league it's in and abstract and all this as your legal description and how many acres it is. But if you were to take that legal description that's in the county and attach a plat map of that property and say, hey, here's the 6.8 acre legal description, and here is an Exhibit A of the tract that we're buying. And if that realtor representing the buyer would have had that exhibit in there of the tract, I don't think there's much we could have done as a seller except move forward with that. But being that they didn't have an exhibit attached to what they were buying, even if it would have surveyed out to 15 acres or 20 acres, this is what we're buying. We were able to get out of that contract because there wasn't a really good legal defining description of what they were exactly buying.
Yes.
And so that was a reminder of how important, yes, having a legal description, but at the same time, having an exhibit attached to the contract. If you're any skepticism of what exactly you're buying and the amount of acreage that's there.
Make it as clear as possible to the courts what you're buying.
Absolutely. So for the agents that were in there, the brokers, I think that was a very important part of that 3-hour contracts course. So
it was a huge class that had like 100 people in there.
Yeah, and they're always changing our contracts, so it's good to get updated. At least once a year on the contracts, because Texas Real Estate Commission and the lawyers are always trying to make those things better. For us. So, end of the day with that, and then we had our RLI Social following that, and lots of good networking and food. And then we had dinner after that, and we had really good couple days.
I didn't want to brag too much on the podcast.
So we do try to eat good. Going off that, we start off the next day with, we had, like you said, we had a lot of great speakers. Another thing too is, Sam Middleton was there. And do you know who Sam Middleton was?
I'm not too familiar.
Well, Sam Middleton, when you're in a room with people like that, that's pretty neat. Sam Middleton brokered the Sixes Ranch.
Okay.
T. Boone Pickens Ranch,
yes.
which is, and the Panhandle brokered that one too. He lives I believe Sam lives in Amarillo, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Amarillo or Lubbock. But anyhow, he brokering the T. Boone Pickens Ranch was a very, very special place. Lots of water. I remember I always studied T. Boone Pickens. I read his book, The First Billion's the Hardest. Mm-hmm. And Sam got to know T. Boone over the years. And as a matter of fact, I was such a great big T. Boone Pickens fan because I always liked him because he was always for everything to get the United States energy dependent, off of mm-hmm. other people's oil and stuff. So he said we need to do it all to get energy dependent so we're not handcuffed to other countries and all this. So, mm-hmm. But in the front of the room, not in the front of the room, but at the front of the office, I have the Mesa Vista Ranch, which was yes. T. Boone Pickens Ranch. So if you ever come to our office, I have a booklet of all the pictures and details of that ranch. And a client of mine had given me that what do you call it, table book?
Yeah, coffee table
book as a gift on one of our closings one time. So, and if you never read T. Boone Pickens' book, The First Billion's the Hardest, he's got a lot of Booneisms in there. And I've always enjoyed that, being in oil and gas, he said that a lot of people would stop on the way home at the bar and all this. And he said, there's work and there's home. He said, I don't stop in between. And another Booneism he had was, I don't get drunk 2 days in a row. I always thought that was good.
It's probably a good rule of thumb.
Good rule of thumb. Yeah. So moderation and don't do it twice in a row.
Yeah. That's awesome. So,
what is the next topic we're going to discuss?
I guess what was your favorite, out of all the presentations, if you could remember all of them, what was your favorite one that stood out to you maybe?
I like the one which we'll get to is the Texas land trends.
Yeah.
And what's happening there with Texas land and how much is being converted from ag useful use to cement basically. Mm-hmm. And so losing that over time. But Ryan and I, guys, we went and listed a 600 plus acre place out south of Hallettsville this week. And then we were driving. I said, man, there's still plenty of land left in Texas.
There's plenty of land. I'll tell you what.
So we were driving past rice farms and all that stuff. So
yeah, that's I did a little side research and that's what I found was that, it is scary. It's happening. Urbanization is happening rapidly. And as one of the speakers said, about 1,000 acres per day is lost. Of working lands is lost to urbanization. So that's crazy and that's a lot. But little fact I found on that Texas land trend, still 81% of the total area of Texas mm-hmm. is still privately owned working land. So there's plenty of land out there. They're not making any more, but there's still plenty for now. They're not making more of it, but there's still some out there. And but it's interesting,
Yeah.
Around
and then also, listening to that deal, and then Dr. Lynn Krebs always does a great job mm-hmm. of really doing the micro part of just focusing on Texas land trends, breaking it up by region, seeing which regions are doing well. Looking at the Panhandle. Panhandle had the greatest increase this year as far as price appreciation. East Texas is struggling. The northeastern part of the state is still struggling. Their prices have come down somewhat there. Mm-hmm. And then our region, which is Region 5, the Brazos Bottom region, we saw, I believe, not on right. We had about 4.5% appreciation last year, average about $10,000 per acre. But what we're still seeing, even though prices are still increasing in most of the parts of the state, I think it was only 2 regions had decreases, but like West Texas and in the northeastern part of the state is the only parts that were decreasing. But we're still seeing volume levels of sales tremendously down. There's not as much mm-hmm. land being traded currently as there was, of course, during the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, we're just still not at those pre-pandemic volume levels of land trading. So, I was one of the moderators. Was it the first day? Yeah, the first day in the afternoon. And so I was part of bringing on Dr. Lynn Krebs. And I said, as a real estate broker, people ask you how's the market, you always want to reply, it's the best I've ever seen. But obviously when we got the appraisal panel up there, we noticed that it isn't the best we've ever seen. We're seeing a lot of markets not have the volume, not have a lot of sales, and all that good stuff. So, but we are, they did say, after 2025, they do see their model does predict that we start seeing more volume.
Makes sense.
So with rates starting to trickle down, and that's the thing is, I don't know what he called it, but he said, we can have a forecast, but it could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
We have seen how the tariff deal plays out in the United States and going through all that. We'll see how that goes. So Dr. Lynn Krebs and Dr. Doutzire, he was the last speaker the last day. And I think they keep him last because he's the most dynamic.
Yeah.
And he's fun to listen to, but he's more of a geopolitical speaker, so you got to get a geopolitical view, not just in Texas, but United States and worldwide of all the parts that come into play in the land market. So what's cool about or interesting is that, we're in Texas land markets. This is where we're what we call home and where we're working every day, but geopolitically worldwide can affect here at home too.
Yep.
So
yeah,
what about you?
I had a couples. I really liked the renewable panel that they had, just hearing from people in the industry. And not so much just people trying to sell it, but like lawyers and people who deal with the contracts and leases, and what those the implications for landowners. And what that meant.
Yeah, that too. I had actually visited with the gentleman that spoke after that panel, and Texas passing a new Senate bill 8-something, I forget what the 819, and that bill is going to put more regulation on solar, on wind in Texas. And basically it's going to create setback lines off of fence lines, off of neighbors and all this. Yeah. And then also you're going to have to go through a lot more town hall meetings. And basically it's kind of like when we rezone a property, they send out a letter to any neighbor within 200 yards or 200 feet of that property. And so, then they show up to the P&Z meeting and then they get to voice their opinion. Same kind of deal with this.
I think so. I looked that bill back up and it passed yesterday or 2 days ago now.
Yes, it did. You're right.
But after being amended pretty heavily, I don't know if they have to do the town hall anymore. They'd have to post in the paper.
Okay.
And the surrounding counties. And then instead of that 3,000 feet for the wind turbines, which I think got everyone brought all the commissioners to Austin.
Right.
That has been reduced to twice the height of the turbine at the tip of the blade. So I think people were able to voice some concerns about that, but now there's going to be some more regulation whenever it comes to these renewable leases on properties.
Yeah, there's a lot of this right now, right? And especially the landowners that have land and that potentially could be around them. Then also, you have the United States that's investing heavily in these renewables, and they're wanting to see it happen, the energy dependence thing and all this. And so, we all have different viewpoints on it, and I think the biggest thing is do renewables, do wind turbines, do solar, potentially inflict on the price value of properties or of neighboring properties. And I think that's where people are trying to figure out, is this good for where I'm at? And so I think my take on it, Ryan, is if you're in West Texas or if you're in the plains or if you're in where there's land that's very flat and doesn't have that emotional appeal, what do they call it? Topographic relief. And like us, we have the rolling hills. It's beautiful out here. And if you have wind turbines and solar, I think that it could potentially harm the topographic relief a little bit.
Fair.
But if you're where it's flat, where there's rice fields and all that, I don't think it makes that big a difference. And so you're probably seeing it not affect prices there as much. I don't know what it would do here.
Right. They had that presentation where they said, overall the data says property values haven't decreased because of renewables, but is that biased towards all the renewables in West Texas,
Yeah.
where people are like fine selling land right next to it or fine, working the land next to these installations. Whereas, yes, here we got
Right.
family farms that'll be butted up against these things.
I think over time it will play out. I look at, it's no different than the railroad, right? We're in Schulenburg, Texas.
Yeah.
The railroad was supposed to go to High Hill,
Mhm.
Texas, right? High Hill did not want it. So it came through Schulenburg, and High Hill's not Schulenburg, right?
It is not.
And so, it's very interesting to think about things. I think over time you kind of used to it. My family, my wife's family's from Munster, Texas, and there's wind turbines up there, and it surrounds their house, and I think when it first happened, you're like, oh my goodness, but now you don't really.
Yeah. And it's probably different for everyone, probably. And that's probably part of this friction that we're having.
Yeah.
Everyone has like a different, just slightly different opinion, and we're just trying to figure it out right now.
I know somebody asked me the other day, if you had the potential to lease for wind, would you do it? And I said, well, depends on what they're paying and how many I could fit on my land so I can retire and get out of here so I don't have to listen to everybody complain to me about leasing for wind.
I know.
I have to escape.
Yeah. They said, what did they say? The person with the data, they were like, you may not like it, but the property value stays the same, but maybe not here. And that's probably, that's the interesting thing about those installations. And that one company that came through town, it made it really rubbed everyone the wrong way.
Yeah.
But they also seem like they're probably on the fringes of these renewable companies where they gather leases and then kind of present that lease package to the actual renewable company. And there's all kinds of.
And a broker made a really good point. I was talking to him about wind and how a lot of us are against it. But he said, if you're a landowner and you're land rich but cash poor and you're negotiating with these things, these people have a lot of money, right? They got a lot of financial backing. And you get in a situation where they develop your property and they don't quite do it right and you need to fight that. You better have the financial well-being to be able to fight that. And so if you don't, you're going to get yourself in a situation where you can't fight the battle that you need to fight to win that battle.
You just have to accept whatever they did on your property.
Yeah. So that was a good point.
Another
thing too that I learned in Colorado, we were talking about solar. So like oil and gas, there's over 100 years of case data. There's of law, case law that's been built. Whereas this stuff, it's so new, there's not a whole lot of case law. And so, if obviously there's probably going to be lawsuits over time, but what do those look like and how does that play out? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
So it's so new.
Yeah. And I don't know if many of these leases have even reached their end of life phase where they have to do these remodeling or like refittings or take down installations. I feel like that in the few years.
And the data centers are coming through the pipeline too, because we got this AI fight, like if China wins the AI fight or the United States. So the United States is obviously going to throw a lot of money at AI. We need data centers for that kind of stuff. And so you're seeing a lot of push for data centers. And those they're going to follow the transmission lines just like solar does, and battery and solar. So, the fight for getting access to transmission lines, the fight to get access to the substations. So if you have properties that are located on there, you're going to be approached, and they're approaching everyone where there's transmission lines and where there's substations. And so you need to be ready for that because you will be approached, and everybody's getting approached. And so I think it's very important to put together. I've been working on this stuff for about 2.5 years, maybe probably 3 years already. I kind of got involved with it through Landgate and all this, but putting together a good legal team to represent you in those situations. I've been working on that, trying to get on the forefront of that, representing our clients and putting together a solid team to help our clients navigate those situations because they will come.
Yeah.
So,
and they'll offer you a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens, Ryan, the first thing that they're going to send you a term sheet. Hey, this is our offer, right? Once you get that term sheet, you like the terms. That's just like a couple pages. That's easy. Okay, I like the terms, but now it comes to the contractual side, and that's where all the details are at. And I mean, these things are very, very long, and a lot of words and interpreting those those words is complicated. So it's very important. Don't sign just anything. You want to make sure you're protecting yourself.
Lawyer up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be more and more firms that are start to specialize in these certain aspects of renewables.
I'm telling you, if you go look up any green energy company, most of those executives for these green companies were in the oil and gas. They've transitioned over.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of these oil and gas companies, their portfolios, they've been stricken with, hey, you better have 30% green energy in your portfolio. And the push for that has been major.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just because these installations are quicker to get up, like online too, a lot of times than, creating another natural gas power plant along the transmission lines and stuff like that. Most of those are located on rivers and stuff. So
yeah,
it really is just like another piece to the puzzle of the energy interdependency or independency that America's striving for, but also Texas itself, we're independent from the national grid.
Yeah.
And one of the speakers was talking about how that we saw such a blow up in renewables in Texas compared to everywhere else because of that, because we're able to turn things online quicker than coordinating with half the nation on one side of the grid or the other half, which I found really interesting. And I wonder if that plays a lot into like the speed of renewables, of these solar installations, if that is what's pushing it a lot more too, rather than, the creating more natural gas plants, right? Because we need the energy, so you either got to create more plants, or you have to, or these solar and wind farms find a way to fit that niche and fill the need. And
energy, we have to have it, and affordable energy, right? I think that's why we're trying to do all this.
Yeah, that's right. Keep it affordable.
Yeah. Which brings me to water.
Liquid gold.
Right. Yeah. I know in Colorado, they always say whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And so Texas, we're fighting for our water. If you're a developer, there's, I think they said 4 or 5 developments in the San Antonio area that are like, we can't get water here. And, you have, I forget what it's called. I can't let facts get in the way of a good story, but you'll have these water companies that they basically are, this is all you're going to get. That's all you have access to. But they're saying, hey, we can't give you any more water. We're at capacity, but you're stricken. You can't bring in a new water company because they're protected. They've got the license, I guess, for that area. But they said that there's a way around it.
Yeah.
I forget what that exactly is called, but over a certain time period, you can bring in another water company to bring in more water, but it's going to be expensive. And so what they're saying is Texas is not out of water. We're out of cheap water. And so that's what we're going to be dealing with. So that's going to affect land values. People are going to have to build a community to build more lots and get water. They will need water, and it's going to be more expensive to get that water, which makes me to believe that land is going to get more expensive.
Yeah, definitely. And you're talking about creating reservoirs. I think we have to spend $80 billion over 50 years was the plan from 2020 to 2070 is the water plan for Texas. And there's a shortfall right now in funding, but the legislature's working on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And they talked about how many billions of dollars they need, and I don't even know if we're 1/10 of the way there.
I think they said maybe 7 to 9. I think billion was covered of the projects have been funded so far, and I think right now they're trying to up where my parents live. They're trying to get that reservoir built, and that was at the top of the list apparently for the water plan. Got to get people in Dallas water.
Right.
A lot of people over there, and they're thirsty.
So we talked about too, like West Texas, how the Meridian lines moved, and you're seeing the state, if you look at from 10 years ago, you can see how the aerial has gotten more brown, west of I-35. And you're seeing, East Texas is abundant with water and it's abundant with rain, but the West has gotten hit and not as much rain falls. And you're seeing ag land being converted more to wildlife and to hunting ranches than to farming and ranching, because there's not enough grass for the cattle. There's and all this. So, and you're seeing that if you want to hire, people are willing to pay more to hunt and all this. And so a lot of these ranches are turning into hunting ranches because you can drive your ROIs better as an investment on the land rather than ag purposes.
Yeah, I saw that in that Texas, the land charts or trends, Texas trends, and they that's what I saw a lot, right? You had the working lands, and then everything's decreasing in like how much it is overall, but also like there's croplands going down, grazing lands going down. But the only thing growing is that wildlife every year or every 2 years. It's just a bigger blip.
Yeah.
Which is also important. I mean, a lot of people, Texas has been worked very hard over the years, and so it's good to have these management programs in place to, preserve what people really love about Texas, which is a lot of times wildlife and getting out there, hunting, just relaxing out in nature.
Yes. So I want to go over some of these Texas land facts, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's go.
So this is from 1997 to 2022. The Texas population has increased 55%. The average appraised market value increased 505%. So land's been a great investment. Small farms increased by 31%, and mid-sized farms decreased by 27%, which means that farms are getting smaller. I think things are getting chopped up, and that's what's happening there. And working land loss over the last 5 years contributes to 51% of the total loss over the last 25 years. So we're seeing it speed up. The land loss over the past 5 years contributes 51% of the total loss over the last 25 years. That's wild. So the state's increasing population, particularly within the surrounding urban centers, continues to have a significant influence on the continued increase of land values. That's another thing they said, Ryan. I remember this. So your land loss is really on your neighboring counties, not your urbanization ones. Like let's say you're in Bexar County. It's those counties, Bexar County's in San Antonio, for you that don't know, listeners. But the surrounding counties of Bexar are the ones that are getting the most land loss because things are getting pushed out, right? And you're the closest to those bigger urbanized counties. And so that's where the land loss is really taking shape.
Good point. Yeah, I would like to look at my home county of Denton and see what that one's like.
Yeah, Denton's grown a lot.
Yeah.
Used to be nothing there. My wife went to school there at UNT. And when I first met her, we went up there and there was not near as much stuff driving on I-35 going through there. But now you drive through, it's like a mall. You have all these restaurants and that town has changed a bunch.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Last time I was up there, I was sitting in the canes and I was like, wait a minute, where this used to be a chicken farm when I'm here eating chicken fingers.
Right.
What is happening? And it's interesting. Yeah. It's crazy up there.
For sure. So we have a lot of good data. I don't want to bore all our listeners, but I have laying out here, and we can send you PDFs of all this stuff, but every region broken up and you can see what exactly has been happening with land values and all this over time. And so, the Texas Hill Country was like your Austin going to Waco. Ryan, 2 years ago, I went to that conference. And this was in 22. And the increase in land values was 30%. And that was wild to me. I mean, 30%. And they were like, this is unsustainable. This cannot keep happening. And what they had said back then, which was, I guess that's 3 years ago already, a lot of that was, that's when they passed the CHIPS Act and all that. And, you had your, like in Taylor, Texas, they had the chips manufacturing plant, all those being built, Samsung and all this. And so there's a lot of speculation in the market. So people are gobbling up this land, speculating on the increase, which really drove up the prices so high. But last year was like that same region, 0.1%. It really didn't see, really flat, didn't grow at all.
Yeah.
I think it's because prices jumped so fast, so quick. And so they were right. This has to take a break, has to take a breather.
Market has to correct.
Yeah. So it hasn't come down in price, but it's very flatline. Not a whole lot of increase, if any, in that region. So
that's good.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. And so, listen to, do you remember anything from Dotsire that last day, that last session? Any high points you want to?
Nothing that wasn't, I'm trying to think of some optimistic things that he said.
Yeah. He's
well, I think one of them, I mean, it was like a good point, right? That everyone's sitting, like, for people my age and stuff like that, if you're sitting around waiting to see those like 3% interest rates that we saw back in a few years ago, don't. It's not worth waiting. If you're trying to get into the, start building equity in a property or something like that, you're not going to see those rates again.
He basically said if you bought at 3% rate and you want a bigger house and you can't afford it, it's because you bought a house you couldn't afford 4 years ago, 5 years. You really couldn't afford the house. The only reason you could is because rates were so low.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't sit around waiting. If you have the means to do it, it's not going to get cheaper.
Yeah. He said these rates are very normal. They're very good rates.
That was the thing. Like overall, if you look at all the charts, this is where this just should be the normal range of where everything is sitting.
Another great thing he said, folks, is he said media is an opinion. You're getting people's opinions. You're not really getting what's true information. He said, he likes to read the Wall Street Journal. He said that's out of all the publications, he feels like that one's the most accurate. You're really getting the news there. But your CNNs, your Foxes, he's like, you're getting high blood pressure for no reason. He said, he said, I fact check all that stuff. And a lot of times it's not newsworthy. It's not even real news. They're just trying to get your blood pressure up. But he said the best news you can do for yourself is going to events like this and asking your fellow people that are around you, hey, what are you seeing in the market? What's selling? And asking questions. And that's the real news right there. You're getting accurate information by just us talking together. We're all in the same boat together, us talking together and finding out what's truth and what's not truth.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to have that anecdotal evidence for what you're seeing on the ground rather than all these numbers flying at you and what things should be, and what you might expect, but talking to other people and networking, it's real important to figure out what is actually happening.
Yeah. Asking your customers too, what do they want? When we had Gary here, he said, I asked him as a realtor, what should I be doing? He said, talking to your customers, talking to your clients, asking them questions. What is it you're looking for? What do we need? And that's what you need to know to make better business decisions so you can help your clients.
Yeah.
So all good things to take into consideration. So
you have any other outlooks from the conference that you want to share, or
I
wrap up maybe for someone who wasn't there, why they should go, or I guess maybe,
why should they go?
Why should you go? Why are these things cool?
I always go to the National Land Conference, and that's always a really good one too. But this one, the Texas A&M one, is just Texas specific, and I think to dial in and really get to know what's going on in your state, like they talk about the Senate bills and all that stuff, really knowing what's coming so you can prepare for it and make good decisions, and just all the things we talk about, renewables, we talk about water, we talk about all those things that we're needing in Texas, and trying to figure all this out together. And if there's just so many good ways to make a difference there and get to be known too, and finding the right connections. When you get there, the connections you make are what's valuable, and you get to meet people from all over the state, the movers and shakers. That's where it's at, really.
Yeah, and I just do marketing, but I think it's good to meet the people actually selling, who I'm marketing to and for.
Yeah.
So I like going to these things and meeting people and seeing what they're up to.
Yeah. Well, we went to dinner with Capital Farm, Tim Knezik, and Tim Knezik's a legend. We're going to have him on the podcast here soon, with Capital Farm Credit. And so you get to go to dinner with those people, and then you get to, just going to dinner with Tim, and he's saying, hey, I was talking about Sam Middleton at the beginning, but he's like, have you heard the podcast that Sam was on? And I was like, I haven't. So he sent me the link, and I got to listen to that the other day. And it's really interesting to listen to people that have sold, $50 million, $100 million dollar ranches, and get to listen to their stories and how those things come to fruition. And because when you're there, at least somebody else has been there, and you can say, hey, I got this big thing going on. I don't know how to navigate this, but I know somebody that does.
Yeah.
And you know who to call. By going to things like this, you can pick up those connections, and you know who to call when you're in those situations.
I'm gonna start building that triangle referral of trust for referrals. Yeah.
Yeah. Triangle of trust. Yep.
Everything. So Anything else? I mean, I had a great time. I look forward to the next one and seeing more RLI people and everything like that. So
Yeah.
thanks for bringing me along.
Yeah. And one more thing, your vendors that are there.
Yeah.
You know, like our vendor for Real Stack was there. You got the vendors that do 1031 exchanges, like kind exchanges. You got people that are there, you know, just with the whole your Delaware Statutory Trust, which, you know, a lot of people think that if I do a 1031 exchange after 1031 into another property, no, you can do a 1031 into a Delaware Statutory Trust, which basically is hands off, but you're still very invested in real estate, but you're not having to manage that property. Yeah. Somebody else is managing it, whether it's an Amazon warehouse, whether it's apartment complexes and all this. And if you're not familiar with 1031s, it's when you sell one investment for another, you can exchange that and pay no taxes. And it's a way to defer your taxes and buy something bigger. So it's the whole monopoly game of selling 4 greenhouses and buying a red hotel and just trading up, right?
Yep.
So,
yeah. Very good.
Thank y'all for listening to the Entre Podcast.
Yeah, that'll be it.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and like and share this podcast too, if you don't mind. We appreciate it very much.
Yes, we would. And yeah, you can find us everywhere at entre.realestate. Should pop up. And thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.